Hi, I'm James. Let's take a look at how to use the Vapi Assistant AI plugin from Zeroqode. Just before we jump into it, if you need any help building your app or product, feel free to reach out to our team by visiting our website at zeroqode.com. We're the largest maker of plugins for Bubble, as well as the top gold tier Bubble agency. We have almost 10 years of experience and can help you build any web, mobile, or AI product, or even help automate your business. While you're there, make sure you check out zeroqode.com/plugins. This is the full list of all the plugins we make, and there's like over 700 of them. So there's something there to cover pretty much everything your app could possibly need to do. For example, there's Stripe Marketplace Express. This helps you accept credit card payments on your app. There's Mapbox Maps, and this gives all sorts of maps functionality. This one's really good for saving on Bubble's hosting costs. This is AWS File Uploader, so you can store your files on your own S3 bucket. There's Air Calendar, there's Air Chat and Messaging. There's so many more there, so definitely explore that and check that out. Okay, let's have a look at the plugin itself. So we're on the plugin page here on the Zeroqode website, and this will give us a great overview of different ways to get started with this plugin. So from the get-go, what the Vapi Assistant plugin does is it enables voice AI within our app. So we can have full conversational AI, back and forth voice chat, and we can also sort of educate the AI on our own docs and our own information. Within the app itself, there's also workflows for creating and deleting and setting up AI assistants within the app. So we don't necessarily need to go to Vapi service to do that, although we will be for this demo video here, as well as for speech recognition, conversation management, and all sorts of fun stuff. So there's a few things to look at on this page here to get started. The first is the live demo button here. If I click that, this will open up a pre-built app by Zeroqode with the plugin installed here that we can kind of experience it from a user's point of view. So here we are. On the left, we have a bunch of assistants that have been set up on Vapi's end, or within the app itself with the create new assistant function that's here. And on the right is the actual conversation. So let's test it out.
Hello.
Hi, this is a test.
Great. Let me know if you need any help.
Cool. That works quite well. So refresh that so that it's not going to keep replying to me. Great. So that's a demonstration of the app itself. And you've got multiple assistants. We can create a new assistant and choose all the settings that we want to select in terms of AI model and language and any sort of specifics and customizations we want to put for each of those assistants. Back on the plugin page, the second thing to check out is the demo editor button. Now this is going to open up the exact same app that we were just looking at. However, from the Bubble editor's point of view, so that we can, kind of pull it apart, reverse engineer it, look at the workflows that are powering it, how the app is set up, and check to see if the functionality that we're needing for our build is present. Okay, here we are. So we can see the same app that we were just looking at. We can see how this is set up with repeating groups and each element. We can go into the workflow tab and see how the workflows are set up for making new assistants and for replying back and forth with the conversation, and can really, pull it apart and see how it's all working. There's also the documentation link here. So this is super important. This will go through every single thing we need to know to set up, starting from the Vapi service, which we're going to go through together, as well as, elements, setting it up within our app itself, all the elements and properties and what they all mean, and some example actions and workflows for getting this to work the way we want it to work. So this will be definitely something you should keep it open in a second tab while you're setting this up and working with this, just as a reference. The last thing I want to point out on this page here is our intercom chat bubble down the bottom right here. If you have any questions about this plugin, before you're setting it up, while setting it up, about functionality, any sort of troubleshooting, send us a message here. We would love to help out and get you set up. All right, let's jump into the Bubble editor and get the ball rolling and build something. So once we're in the Bubble editor, the first thing to do is to get this plugin into our app. So first thing on the left-hand side, jump over to the plugins tab here. Then in the top right, click on add plugins. And then in this search field, we're going to type in Vapi Assistant. And there we go, Vapi Assistant AI by Zeroqode. Now, there are two ways to get this plugin set up within your app. There's a once-off payment or there's a monthly payment. Now, the monthly subscription is the most cost-effective and risk-free way to try this out, as you're charged on a pro-rata basis. So you're only charged for the individual days that you have this plugin active and being used within your app. So that would mean if you install it, try it out for one day, and decide it doesn't quite work for your use case, and you then remove the plugin, you're only charged for that 1 day. So $7 a month divided by 30 days of a month, for example, ends up being a very cheap and risk-free way to try this out and test out whether it's right for you. And you can then upgrade to the once-off payment if it becomes a core part of your app. But whichever way you go, install the plugin, and you'll then see it in your left-hand side here. We can get the ball rolling. Now we're going to build something together here, a very basic setup of this plugin integrated to the app. So we're going to be able to have back and forth conversations, voice conversations with the AI, and display the text that's being spoken and said within our app. From there, you can extend that by saving the text to a database, or adding in functionality for new assistants, or building a custom UI around this. But we'll just look at the core of this for today, just to get you started. Now, the first thing to do is, back in our plugins tab here, we need to get our API keys so that we can connect to the Vapi service. So to do this, head over to vapi.ai, and we'll be on this page here. And you're going to need to sign up for a free account for this. Now, I've already set up my account, but just go ahead and choose a username and a password, and you should land here on the dashboard. And yours will look a little bit different to mine, as I've already been testing this out, and we've got some data here already. The first thing to do is to click on your username in the bottom left, the green button, and then click on API keys. And here is where we find our 2 keys. So we've got our private key and our public key. Copy both of those and bring them back to our Bubble app. Now, the API key is the private key, and the public key is the public key, funnily enough. And then copy them both as well to the dev environment, so you can have this working before you publish this as a live app. Great. Once they're in, let's head back to the Vapi website for a moment. We also need to look at our assistants. So on the left-hand side here, click on Assistants. Now, so that we can have a reference for this, the documentation walks through all of these steps here. So creating an account, setting up an API key. Here are your keys. And then here we are in Assistants. So we need to create an assistant. An assistant is just the kind of person, quote unquote, the AI we will be talking with. And we can set a bunch of parameters to customize that and make that work the way it needs to work for our particular app. So from here, I already have a test assistant here, but if we click Create Assistant, this is the first thing you'll be clicking. And you've got some, templates, I guess I'd call them, from Vapi around some common use cases for these assistants, or you can do a blank template and start with your own. I will call this Test Assistant, and then click Blank Template, and then click Create Assistant. And here are a bunch of things we can change and adjust and see how we want this to work. So for starters, we've got different providers for the AI we'll be talking with. Within each provider, different models that we will be working with, depending on how much you're wanting to be spending, how much intelligence you want each one to have. So that'll be unique to your use case. Now, the knowledge base is really interesting. This is where you can feed it data that is unique to your app. So this could be documentation. This could be specific how-tos for your industry or your domain that your users will be talking with, and they need that custom knowledge. And then temperature and max tokens are unique to each provider and AI provider. What else do we have here? These are the tabs here we'll be looking at. So transcriber is how the transcription works. Voice is where you set the character, I guess, the tone of voice. So I could put, I think there was an Australian male, seeing as I am an Australian male. And then you got different providers as well for where these voices come from and the model and all sorts of interesting stuff. So have a look around here for more detail and data that you can change around all of this. There is also the system prompt in the first message you specify here. So the first message is what the AI will say to you when you initiate a conversation or when your user initiates a conversation. So for example, in my one here, I've written, "Hi there, how can I help?" Maybe I'll just change this to "Hello," and then hit publish so that it saves. You can also put assistant prompt in. So this sets the context, I guess, or the personality or the kind of base level at which you want this assistant to be operating from. And it kind of sets the tone for all subsequent messages. So have a experiment around here so that you can test out and adjust this the way that works best for your app. Now, the last thing that's going to be very important here is this assistant ID. So we're going to come back to this in a moment once we start setting up our canvas somewhat. But yeah, just keep an eye on this. This is what we'll be using to connect with this particular assistant within our app. Okay, we are back in the bubble editor now. We've set up the Vapi side of things. The first thing we need to do is get this element on the page. So under our assets, if we type in Vapi, you'll see there's a new element called Vapi AI. And you just need to drag that somewhere onto your canvas. And that element represents a connection with the Vapi service that we just set up. And let's have a look at some of the parameters we need to change here. So we've got the assistant ID, which will probably sound very familiar as we just looked at that. That's where we paste that ID code. We can move parts of this here. All right, and type message, we need to change this to type message. That just needs to be there. That just sets it up. And then we have a few other elements here. So we can have a custom button to initiate the conversation. This might be a microphone icon. It might be a button that says chat with us. Or for our demo, for example, we're just going to use the default Vapi button here. And that puts a button on our app, on our page that's, set up by Vapi. But I would recommend making this more personal and more applied to your app's branding and messaging by using a custom button. All right, and then using the default button, we have a bunch of other options we can set here for where the button's positioned and the color and the text and all that sort of thing. I've already set one of these up here. That is this one here. So I put in my assistant ID. Now that assistant ID comes from here. I just copied this assistant ID. Great. That's all this will need for this button to start showing on our page. Now I'm just going to hide this element here for a moment, as we're going to come back to that in a moment, and I don't want to necessarily confuse our interface. But yeah, now that we've added a assistant ID in here, we've looked at some of these settings and said, yes, we want to use the default button. Let's press preview and see what we get. Here we go. We have our button in the top left, just as we specified. We have the color, we have the text. And if I click this, we should be able to now talk with our AI. We specified the voice. We've got our assistant ID from Vapi. We put in our API keys. We've got the element on the page. It has everything it needs to connect with the service. Let's try it out.
Hello.
Hi, I'm just testing if this is going to work.
Great. Feel free to ask any questions or start a conversation.
Perfect. That works really well. Okay, so let's say we don't necessarily want to use that floating button. Let's put in our own button on the page. So I've just put a button on the canvas. I'll say chat with our AI as the label. And let's add a workflow to this button. All right, cool. When the button is clicked, we want to, and I'll search Vapi, we want to start a Vapi AI. Now I've only got the one on the page. It's just our Vapi AI A, and that should be everything we need. I'm just going to go back to our canvas and turn off use the default button so that we don't see that floating on our page. All right, let's try this out now. Great, we have a button. If I click that and wait a few seconds.
Hello.
Hi, is this working?
Yes, everything seems to be working fine. How can I assist you today?
Great, and that worked nicely. Need to put in some sort of loading state once the user clicks the button so that it's clear that something is happening and we're not just waiting that long. But yeah, that's how you would choose a set custom button with the workflow for this. For the rest of this, I'm just going to keep using this one here. So I'm going to turn back on, use the default button, and I'll delete our button here. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at is how do we display the text on the screen? How do we show that, show the transcription of our conversation? And that's why I have this repeating group here. So this is just a standard repeating group. And inside, I've just got a text element. Let's have a look at how this is set up. So by selecting the repeating group, I've set the type of content to be type message Vapi API. And that's just this one here from the plugin types. And the data source is the messages that are coming from Vapi AI A, which is this one here, Vapi AI A. And yeah, messages. So we've got a bunch of other states, whether the call has started, whether there's an error, the call ID, the volume level, all sorts of fun stuff there. But for now, we just wanted to show the messages. So that's the data source and the type of content for this entire repeating group. Now, inside of each cell, we have a text element. And what we want that text to say is the current cell's type message content. And all that's saying is for every single cell, for every single message in this repeating group, get the content of the current cell's message. Nice and straightforward. So now, once we start talking, this repeating group will start listening for all the messages that are happening through the Vapi AI A's element. And every message that comes through, it'll display that message, the content in this text element. I'm just going to now unhide this element so that it appears in our preview. Let's try it out now. Okay, we now have our element showing, and if I start talking with the AI assistant, we should start to see a transcription of our conversation.
Hello.
Hi, I'm testing to see if this works with the transcription feature.
That's great. Let me know if you need any assistance with anything.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
There we go. We have a transcription of our conversation. Hello, hi, I'm testing to see if this works with the transcription. That's great. Cool. Looking good. And it's just going to keep adding more and more cells as they're needed. And the reason it's doing that is in our repeating group, in the appearance tab, I specified, I turned off set fixed number of rows. So now it'll just keep adding more rows as they're needed. Now, of course, this has zero styling. I've just put on the defaults straight onto the page. So you'll need to adjust this styling wise to work within your app and fit with your use case. But this is how you would connect it all up, make it work with the Vapi AI's service. You can head to an assistant and get it all running and working. Now, if we go back to the documentation for a moment, there's a lot more that can be done here. So we looked at this workflow, starting a session with the voice assistant. There's also a similar corresponding stopping a session action within workflows. We can see the exposed states we looked at before and the element events here, whether a call has started or a call has stopped. And we can trigger things to happen when a call has started and stopped. So this would be great for what we just saw with a loading state. If we're using a custom button, we did see there were those few seconds of waiting once until a conversation was initiated. So we could show a loading icon and then have that loading icon hide once the call has started as a trigger. If we jump over to the Vapi website for a moment, this is where we were creating our assistants. So we set up an assistant, we set their information here and details here and their voice. All of this can be done within our app if we want to. So there are workflows for creating a new assistant. We can specify all the information around the model and the AI provider, the first message, and there's all the information for doing this here in the documentation, as well as, listing the assistants that are available, retrieving a certain assistant, deleting and updating. All of that information is here in the documentation for more advanced implementations of this plugin. But for now, that is a basic setup for this plugin here. We've set up everything on Vapi's end. We've got our API keys, installed the plugin. We've connected with the assistant ID of our assistant, and we can now have voice conversations here within our app. Now, this is great for support messages. This is great for documentation, all sorts of things that your users might need assistance with. Alrighty, and that's about it for this video. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions at all about this plugin or setting up your Bubble app, installing this, getting this to work, please send us a message. We would love to help out. Happy building.